It's been a weird month, March, for adventure news. We've got 175 horsepower dirt bike from Buell. Can-Am are getting into the electric bike market. We've also got a scrambler coming from Royal Enfield that's based on their Himalayan. Aprilia have just released the price for the Touareg or Touareg 660, and it's definitely got my eyebrows raised to the top of my head as prices just seem to be skyrocketing. So let's jump into all this weirdness for March. Now, you're probably all saying this isn't very practical, whilst another part of your brain is saying, I'd love to have a go, 175 horsepower in the dirt. What could possibly go wrong? And I think that's the point from Buell here. They really need to make a splash, get attention, get back out on the map and get on all our radars. And I think that certainly has been the case with this bike. It's lit up all of the media articles talking about this and the crazy numbers it's producing. So let's have a little bit of a deeper look at what this bike is about. So it's a 72-degree liquid-cooled V-twin that's making 175 horsepower and 100 foot-pound of torque. It's using the same engine out of Buell's existing sports models. It's got a 37-inch seat height, 26.75 degrees of rake, and an adjustable swing arm for 66 to 70-inch wheelbase. And it's also going to have an adjustable swing arm. That is a very crazy and interesting thing that probably is going to appeal to a very specific kind of person that's doing professional racing and needs a bike like that. The thing that comes to my head the most with that swing arm extension is probably for hill climbs, but I'm sure there's other applications as well. So this is kind of based off Buell's 1190 hill climb racer, and what we know from that bike is it does have WP suspension. So I would expect that the Buell dirt bike will have WP suspension as well. I think that's a pretty safe bet here. The price of this bike US is all we have at the moment, and it's $19,995. So that is an awful lot of money. But if you look at it in the light of all these made to order rally bikes, say you go to KTM and you want the full rally kit, you were doing the Dakar and it needed to be kitted out, or you're just a professional desert racer, whatever your application is, those are the kinds of figures you're used to looking at. So it's nothing strange in that way. They've made a very specialist machine here to appeal to a very small amount of people. There's more exciting news to come. Buell, in the announcement of this dirt bike, they also announced a Sport Tourer based off the same engine, but they did say they are making an adventure model based off the dirt bike and the Sport Tourer that we can see. So it will have proper off-road wheels and it will be a full-on adventure bike. They're saying it will be the most powerful and the quickest adventure bike available on the market when it comes. That's in a way a very big claim. Of course, I've talked about how these claims are more to get media coverage rather than really being practical to us consumers, because when it comes to adventure bikes, it isn't about all-out maximum power figures. I'm just excited to see a new adventure bike come out on the market as well as this dirt bike. It certainly is fresh, the numbers are staggering, the price is even crazier, but just new blood, new ideas, pushing the envelope of what we've come to expect in the off-road world, and that's what gets me excited. I really got my fingers crossed that Eric Buell and the guys can really make this work, and I'm looking forward to what they're going to have in the future for us. Royal Enfield have finally released all the specs, pictures, everything about the Scrambler model based off the Himalayan. Now, why exactly would I be bringing this up in a dual sport and adventure segment? Well, as I said before, some of these Scramblers really do come close to being adventure bike. I think the Scram, as it's called from Royal Enfield, is an interesting debate over whether to go with this or the Himalayan, depending on what you want to do off-road. So the engine is still the same, fuel injected, 411cc single air-cooled motor, pumps out just over 24 horsepower and 23.6 foot-pound of torque. It maintains that 15-litre tank, so that's a good sign you're not sacrificing any range if you went with the Scram over the Himalayan. There is a slight difference in suspension, with the suspension being about 10 mil shorter or about half an inch shorter. So we've got 7.4 inches at the front, that's 190 millimeters, instead of the 7.9 or 200 millimeters that was on the Himalayan. So you're only sacrificing a little bit of suspension travel here, and the rear actually stays the same. So it's 180 mil on the Himalayan and this new Scram, that's roughly 7.1 inches. So that's also interesting. You're really not sacrificing any real suspension performance performance. 10 mil really isn't that much. Sure, when it's this short, every little bit helps. So if you need maximum clearance, clearly go for the Himalayan. But if you're not too worried, the Scrambler might be an option for you. And I'll talk more on this as we go through. They are changing from a 21-inch front to a 19-inch front. So that's a clear signal here for what this bike's purpose is. The Scram having the 19-inch wheel is going to be far more road focused with a little bit of dirt capability. The benefit here though is with the slightly lower suspension, that means a slightly lower seat height. Seat height is now down from 31.5 inches to 31.3 inches. So if you're a shorter rider, that is fantastic news. Ground clearance on the bike changes by just over half an inch from 8.6 inches to 7.9 inches of ground clearance. So again, you do sacrifice a little bit there, obviously from dropping the suspension a bit. The other thing here that is interesting is it has a slightly shorter wheelbase as well. We've gone from 57.7 to 57.3 inches. Yes, that is a tiny change. I find shorter wheelbase bikes, they do feel far more flickable and far more nimble. The weight is also down a little bit as well. We've got 432 pounds for this new Scrambler. That's roughly 195 kilos. We've saved a little bit of weight there. So we've got a bike that's potentially more nimble because of that shorter wheelbase. We've also got a bike that is a little bit lighter, and we've also got a bike that has a lower seat height. So that really could appeal to a certain kind of rider. If you're a shorter rider or you were a rider that's not really focused on doing anything serious off-road and you wanted something a little bit lighter than the Himalayan, but you really like that old school look, this really could be your bike. And with Royal Enfield's pricing, it certainly is very easy to get your leg over one of these motorcycles and not break the bank. We're talking about Can-Am. Now, if you're not familiar with them, they are more known for their off-road ATVs and that segment of motorcycles these days, but they have been around since the 70s and they were actually quite successful at making road-going motorcycles for quite a long time. And they've announced that they're moving into the electric sphere. And not only that, they've announced that they are actually going to be producing an electric adventure bike. Now, I have talked about this topic of electric bikes in the adventure and dual sport world and talked about how it is at the moment very difficult for them to come into the market and really compete against combustion engines, given the lack of range and the weight penalty you would have to pay to get the range that you are used to out of your GS or your DR650 with a Safari tank. So that is very tricky. But I also talked about how they're really moving into the enduro scene with their e-bikes and capturing a large amount of people because they're quiet, fun, easy, flickable, and you can do those tight single tracks. So I really see that gaining more traction. The other area I've really seen electric bikes do well off-road is the trials bikes. Clearly you don't need range there. I'm certainly looking forward to this as technology develops, but I am also skeptical whenever I see something adventure bike and electric in the same sentence. I always think not much range and very heavy. The fact that Can-Am announced this, that was my first thought. But there is also some very interesting news. Can-Am actually have the intellectual property of Alta. Now, I'm sure you're familiar with Alta by now. Fort 9 did an absolutely fantastic coverage on the demise of Alta. Basically, Alta were the mainstay of electric off-road bikes. They were really very, very close to challenging enduro bikes and dirt bikes in the combustion engine range. They were just that good. So the fact that Can-Am has the intellectual property of the best off-road electric company is very promising. It's gone from me thinking this will just be a bit of a train wreck to actually thinking this really could be the beginning of electric bikes entering into the dual sport and adventure bike world. There's an awful lot of engineering problems to get around and to make a product that people will actually want and will service their needs while still being electric. So it's a huge challenge. The last topic I wanted to talk about today is pricing, specifically the pricing of the Aprilia Touareg or Touareg, however you say it. I still can't pronounce it, I'm sorry guys, probably never gonna happen. I apologize to Aprilia and all Italians. They announced $22,230 for the base model, and that initially shocked me as that's a lot to ask for a middleweight adventure bike. But then I thought about it more and what's happened over the last few years. Really, this pricing does have me a little bit worried that we're going up and up and up. We're pricing certain people out of the market. And are we leaving value? Are we still getting value for that money? I just wanted to ask the question and get a bit of a feeling from you guys. Is this starting to get a bit too painful with pricing, or are you happy to fork out this amount if the value is there with all the tech and the quality? So let me know down in the comments section below. It's a very interesting time to be in the motorcycle world, particularly in the adventure and dirt world. Hopefully you enjoyed those stories. Put your comments down below on any of the topics or some topics you would like to see in the next episode. And until next time, guys, don't forget to stay shiny side up, and I'll catch you in the next vid. See you later.